find each other's arms, for your love, all you are. I'd start a riot. I'd start a riot.
All right, welcome back to Morning Coffee with your host, Rick Alexander. I'm at Rick Alexander _ and at Lionheart Radio on Instagram. If you guys are digging this show, you can subscribe and get it to you every single morning if you don't already by subscribing at Lionheart Radio on your favorite podcast app. And if you could head to iTunes and give us a 5-star review, I feel like I'm being needy right now, but it really does help us climb the charts and get this message out to more people, which of course is my chief concern with all of the content that I craft. A lot of times I do an episode titled, Maybe You Need to Hear This Today. And of course, I think maybe you need to hear all of it, but today maybe you need to hear this. Stop taking advice from people that you don't want to be like. And that might feel obvious. And at first you might not know how to take that. But what I've come to understand is a lot of the things that get in the way of high performing individuals is the need for validation for their performance. And we put people in our lives, depending on the role that we fall into, we put all these different people in our lives in different spots where we set ourselves up to hand our validation or to hand our worth over to them. You see it a lot with kids because kids a lot of times want validation from their parents and the things that they're doing. And they're always like, look at me, watch this, right? Because your parents are your heroes. But what's interesting is as we grow up, if we never transcend that need for validation, then what we end up doing is plugging all of the people in our lives into those different roles and then essentially putting our happiness or our contentment in their hands by whether or not they are going to validate the things that we're doing in this life. But at the end of the day, one of the things you have to do is look around at your life and say, well, like out of all of the different dynamics, the relational dynamics in your life, which ones are you giving too much power to? And that can be a really powerful question because a lot of times as you grow up, what you begin to understand is that like everybody's got advice for you. But I've said this on the show before, when people give you advice, they're giving you advice based on what they think that they should do if they were in that situation. And that's just a function of people's psychology. People don't have the processing power or the intellectual ability, or especially if they're not trained in counseling or something like that, it's hard to know how to actually respond. So you just give the advice of whatever you think you should do, which is fine. But if you're the person that's taking this advice, the thing you got to ask yourself is, do you want to be like that person? Because a lot of times we never transcend the need for validation from our parents and our siblings and our closest childhood friends and these people that have grown up with us. And if we never transcend that need for validation, we end up giving it away to them. And quite honestly, they don't deserve it because you have an expression on this earth. Your consciousness is expanded to a certain point and you have a message. You have things that you can share with the people in your life. And you got to be careful that you're not stifling that message and stifling your own light because the people around you want to remain more comfortable. Or you're not stifling your own light in order to keep the people around you more comfortable, because that happens quite honestly too frequently. And you know, when I start talking about this, a lot of times people's first reaction, especially with clients and stuff, is to be like, well, yeah, you're right. You know, fuck them. I don't need that. And it's like, well, sure. But you don't have to go around with that attitude necessarily, right? Like what you can do is understand that, especially like with your parents and things like that, it's like you got your best qualities from them. You should be incredibly grateful. I think if you look at your family situation with anything other than gratitude, you're probably wrong. But you can be grateful for something and still understand that you're meant for more. And those two things are not mutually exclusive. And it's super important that you understand that, because a lot of times people think like, well, my parents gave me life, and so I'm under some weird obligation to listen to them for forever, right? And same thing with siblings and same thing with friends. It's like we shouldn't act like we need each other in our lives. We should act like we want each other in our lives. And those are extremely different propositions. But what you come to understand is, if you don't act like you need someone, if you understand that you just want someone in your life, but you don't need their validation for the thing that you're doing or for the life that you're living. And back to the original question, or back to the original statement, which is you got to stop taking advice from people that you don't want to be like. A lot of times we're not taking advice, but we're still putting people in this situation where they have the opportunity to validate what it is that we're doing. But the thing that you got to think about is, if you don't want to be like those people, like whether that's your parents or whether that's your friends or whatever, and maybe there are some qualities that you do want, of course, right? But if you're not on their path, then it would be more weird if they did understand all of the decisions you made along the way, because it might mean that you're on the wrong path. Because if you're on different paths, then you probably have to make different decisions. I just really believe that we have to stop getting so bent out of shape when people don't believe in us, when we're actively trying to do unbelievable shit. And I mean that very realistically. It's like if you're trying to do something that's different, that's bigger, it's a more authentic expression of you in this world, and people don't get it, that actually makes sense. It would be weirder if people did get it. It's like, because if they did get it, they wouldn't be in the grind that they're in, right? And so as you look around at your life, just remember, like, people can give you advice, you can take advice. We should always, like, we're always helping each other out, right? All we really have in this life is each other. But to think that your existence, your expression of your authentic self on this earth should be beholden to the validation of anybody else, no matter who that is, it's just an incorrect statement. And honestly, like, it puts you both in a weird situation, because when you put the need for validation in someone else's hand, you've now put pressure on that dynamic, right? And the pressure is you need something from that person and they have to give it to you. That's how that pressure exists. And if they don't, well, then it becomes strained. And I really find that to be an unproductive way of living your life, because we're going around with all these strained relationships because we're asking for validation from people in very slight ways all the time. But the truth is that who you are, it's too incredible for validation. And I've talked about on past shows how life doesn't need to be validated, essentially, because it is so ineffable and incredible. However, when you think about your life in particular, one of the ways that we do seek this need for validation is like an approval. And, people never come out against you full on. They're never going to be like, that's stupid, don't do that. I mean, sometimes, but for the most part, especially people that are close to you, they know right where to put the knife. They know right how to basically cut you down to make you shamed or whatever the go-to is. And again, most of the time that people do that, they don't even know that they're doing that to you. It's just that they know how to get a response, and so they're acting out that impulse, how to get a response from you. But it's fundamentally your problem if you're giving them the ability to do that. Once again, only take advice from people that you want to be like. And the close cousin of that advice, or the extension of that advice, is that you don't need anybody's permission in order to pursue your authentic path in this life. And when people don't understand it, it's part of it. It's okay that they don't understand it. It'd be weirder if they did. But I'll tell you, I understand it because I love you. And I'll talk to you guys later on Morning Coffee.
You've seen her at a party, yeah. She's doing her rounds. She likes to get it started. She likes to get loud. She's popping that champagne. She's taking shots down. She's living for the moment. She's a time bomb trying to take you out. The ticking of her heart is the only sound. She's a time bomb out to detonate. Trying to cut her wires, but you're too late. Whiskey stain on her dress now. She's wearing it proud. And there's nothing you can tell her, 'cause she's starting to shout. Now she's spraying that champagne all over the crowd. She's living for the moment. She's a time bomb trying to take you out. The ticking of her heart is the only sound. She's a time bomb bound to detonate. You're trying to cut her wires, but you're way too late. She's a She's a